the J35A was officially released for the first time. It can be clearly seen that there is an air inlet at the root of the right wing for air to enter the cooling fuel and air heat exchanger. There should be a concealable refueling device under the cockpit. The Navy version of the J35 has a cockpit cover that flips forward. The advantage of this is that it is easier to repair on the aircraft carrier. The Air Force version of the J35A has the same design, while the export version still has a cockpit cover that flips backward. It uses two medium-sized thrust engines WS-19 for power. Vector engines may be upgraded in the future. This is different from the J20. The chief designer of the J20 has said that through demonstration, the J20 will not be equipped with a vector version of the engine. Thanks to the powerful aerodynamic design, the J20 will have super maneuverability using the basic version of the WS-15, and then installing a vector engine will improve it. Not big, and pilots have their limits. The J20 focuses on informatization. When competing with Chengdu Aerospace Corporation for the fifth-generation heavy fighter, Shenyang Aircraft Corporation's plan was a layout of main wing plus horizontal tail plus front wing. This plan lost to the J20's delta wing plus canard plan in the bidding. Later, SAC self-financed the development of the medium-sized fifth-generation aircraft FC-31, which first flew in 2012. It was originally intended for export and appeared at major air shows. It was later selected by the Chinese Navy to become a carrier-based aircraft and received the J35 serial number, and finally won the title of the Chinese Air Force. People are used to benchmarking the J35 with the F35. However, unlike the F35, the Chinese military did not require the J35 to have a vertical takeoff and landing derivative. The J35 chose to use two medium thrusters as power. When the United States launched the Joint Strike Fighter project, the requirements of the U.S. Department of Defense include the design of vertical takeoff and landing, so the F-35 can only choose one engine. It is very difficult to design and manufacture dual-engine vertical takeoff and landing. The existing technology of small bypass ratio and high-thrust engine cannot be broken through, which leads to the demand for engines like F-135. The United States has adopted the method of increasing the bypass ratio based on the core engine of F-119 to increase thrust. The disadvantage is that the maximum speed is too low. Putting aside the comparison between engines, in terms of probability, the safety of the two engines is also higher, especially at sea, which can avoid many accidents. The choice of two medium-thrust engines for J35 instead of choosing a large-thrust engine with increased bypass ratio of WS-15 is also a very good choice, due to the need for long range and the need to mount large-size ammunition. The J35's body design is larger than the F-35 and only slightly smaller than the F-22. If a large-thrust engine based on the WS-15 improvement is used, then the J35 will be fatter than the F-35, with a lower top speed. According to information disclosed by the China Aviation Propulsion Technology Forum in 2022, the Chinese thrust families developed by China in recent years include WS-13, WS-21, and WS-19. WS-13 is an early copy of the Russian RD-33, and WS-13 is an upgraded model of WS-13. The thrust had increased to 9.5 tons, and the thrust-to-weight ratio was 8.6. However, the bypass ratio was also expanded to 0.682, which cannot meet the requirements of the fifth-generation aircraft for supersonic cruise. It was installed on the FC-31 for testing in 2016. Now this engine has replaced the Russian-made RD-93 and is equipped on the JF-17 Fighter Block 3. The transitional model currently equipped on the J35 is the third-generation engine WS-1, which may be an improved version of the WS-13 that meets the requirements of supersonic cruise. The thrust-to-weight ratio and thrust are both around 9, while the thrust-to-weight ratio and maximum thrust of the target engine WS-19 are both over 10. According to news from the Pakistan Air Force in January, the thrust of the WS-19 is 12 tons. Therefore, the J35 using two medium-thrust engines not only has more power than the F-35, but also has a higher top speed of over 2 Machs, so it will not encounter the embarrassing situation of being unable to catch up with supersonic bombers.